everyone. I wanted to talk with everybody today, just really briefly, about a topic that I'm asked a lot about as a counselor. Um, and that's, I see a lot of clients who struggle with anxiety, and they have a hard time, really understanding sometimes why anxiety has such a hold on them. And so kind of what I want to talk about in this video today is the relationship between anxiety and what we call avoidance behaviors. So when we feel anxious, when we have fear about something, um, a negative anticipation that something may occur, one thing that people very commonly do is they try to avoid the situation. So maybe a very common example of this might be public speaking. And I'll tell you, a little personal story about me. So I'm 43, but I've been a stutterer my entire life. And I remember when I was a young child and in school, anytime I had to give a talk in school, if I had to read aloud in class, just filled me with absolute terror inside, because I had it made up in my mind. I just knew that everybody in that class was going to laugh at me, they were going to make fun of me, and it was going to be so awful. That's the story I would tell myself. And I was totally convinced of it, because it had occurred in the past. So I learned a really, really nifty trick. I learned I could quietly go to the teacher and I could say, "Hey teacher, I feel really, really anxious about having to give this presentation. Please, can't I give my talk to you instead of to the entire class? I'm just so afraid that I'm going to stutter, and the whole class is going to make fun of me." And the teacher 9 times out of 10 would tell me, "Yeah, sure, Brian, that's no problem." My anxiety went away almost immediately in the moment. I didn't feel afraid anymore. I felt totally calm. It was like, wow, I really dodged a bullet. Until the next time. So the next time I would have to give a talk or read in class or give a presentation, the anxiety was back, and it was back with a vengeance. So I had to go to the teacher again and do the same thing. And I did that over and over and over again for years and years and years. And I think what really happened is that instead of actually helping my anxiety go away, it went away in the short term, but the anxiety would always come back. And when it would come back, it seemed to be 10 times worse. So I think it actually reinforced my anxiety. It made my anxiety even stronger over the long term. So long story short, there came a day when going to the teacher and begging to get out of doing it didn't really work for me. I was an undergraduate in college. So this has been almost 20 years ago. Strange how time flies, isn't it? But I was required to take a class on public speaking, which, to someone like myself, a lifelong stutterer, I mean, there's literally not anything worse in the world. I mean, that's like kryptonite to Superman. So I put this class off, for the entire time I was working on my degree. So class I was supposed to take my very first semester in college, I put off until 5 years later, my very last semester. And I remember the first day of class, the class was huge. We had about 60 people in the class. And the first day of class, the instructor tells everybody, in order to pass this class, each of you is going to give a 10-minute presentation on a topic that you've researched. A persuasive speech. So I started, here I found myself going into panic mode again, like I had done for years. And I did what I had always done. I went to the instructor real quietly where nobody really knew. I went to her quietly and pulled my beg, cry, and whine routine. I'm so afraid, I'm so afraid, please don't make me do this. But the instructor was being kind of hard-nosed about it. She's like, I'm really sorry, Mr. Sharp. I'd love to help you out, but I can't make a special allowance for you. That wouldn't be fair to the other students. So, at the time, I remember feeling sorry for myself. I remember, thinking some not so nice things about the instructor because she wasn't giving me special treatment. But I couldn't figure out a way to get out of having to give this speech. And so I ended up giving a talk on a pretty obscure topic. There are 2 states that allow a clinical psychologists who are not doctors. They allow them to prescribe psychiatric medications with additional training. So I gave a talk on the potential benefits or risks of that. Not a topic a whole lot of people would know very much about. And when you get really, really anxious, when you get really, really afraid, you become super aware. We call it hypervigilance. You become really, really aware of any possible signs of a threat. So that's how I was feeling as I was giving my talk. I watched everybody in that classroom for the slightest little hint that they were going to laugh at me or make fun of me. I was ready for it. I was just waiting on it. And something really surprising occurred. So out of 60 people, there were 2 people in the entire class, and they were both in the back of the room. 2 people who kind of chuckled a little bit. They didn't burst out in laughter or anything like that, like I had myself convinced they would. They kind of chuckled a bit, 2 people. But the rest of the class, the other 58 students, did something really surprising. Like, they were not just sitting there listening to my talk, they were asking me questions about my talk. And some way, somehow, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this 20 years later. Some way, somehow, I ended up talking for over an hour, the entire class period, even though I was only really required to talk for 10 minutes. And getting an A+ in this class I had put off for 5 years. So I thought about this after the fact, and I thought, what just happened here? Like, this isn't the narrative that I had been telling myself for so long. I'd been telling myself that things were going to be just absolutely catastrophic, and I had no control over them, and poor me, poor me. And the actual reality turned out to be very different. So I tell you this, I share this with you because, if you have any kind of anxiety, this tendency to avoid may only be making it worse. And a classic example I use, to kind of illustrate this are panic attacks. If you've ever had a panic attack, firsthand, they can feel absolutely debilitating. We notice all these physical symptoms going on with us, and we jump to the worst case scenario. We misinterpret all of that information. Typically as I'm having a heart attack or I'm dying. That's what we typically think when we're having a panic attack. Now, I would encourage you, of course, if you do have any of those physical symptoms, if it hasn't been diagnosed as panic, please see a doctor. Make sure you don't have something really physical going on. But people with panic attacks, they experience these physical symptoms, even though there's not an underlying cause. And it's like their go-to is the avoidance. They'll start to avoid going to places where they think they might have an attack or where they've had an attack in the past because they're so afraid that, oh my gosh, I'm going to have another attack. They might reach for the Xanax bottle, anytime they think they're going to have an attack. And it really actually, even though those things help in the moment, the anxiety goes way, way down. it actually reinforces the anxiety. It makes the anxiety much stronger. So sometimes what I'll do in therapy with somebody who, for instance, is struggling with recurring panic attacks, and I've had them in the past too. I know how debilitating they can feel. But I'll actually encourage them during the session to see if they can have an attack and then notice what happens. And you know, they always tell me, you know, well, the longest a panic attack typically lasts is about 20 minutes. They've never been, you know, they've never had any kind of irreparable medical harm come to them as a result of a panic attack. After about 20 minutes, the symptoms go away. And there's not really any long-standing harm from the panic attack. It just feels uncomfortable at the moment. So I might encourage you, you know, think about you can actually look online. I have an article published in my blog on the relationship between anxiety and avoidance. And it talks a little bit more about this. Go to briansharpcounseling.com and you can read about that there. If you yourself, if you maybe struggle from anxiety, I'd be happy to talk with you, to work with you, and kind of show you some ways to take back some of your own power. And I think, you know, it's kind of like if you have young children, you know, they typically go through a phase where they're afraid of the dark. Well, if I never sit in the dark, if I always keep the light on, how do I ever come to learn that the dark is not really a threat to me? So anxiety and panic work the same way. But again, check out my blog at briansharpcounseling.com. And you know, if you suffer from any kind of anxiety, I'd be happy to talk with you about how I can help you with that. You guys have a great day. Hope everyone has a restful weekend, and you know, please do something to put yourself first. You guys take care.